What's the difference between augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality? It is a range of experiences. On one hand, we have virtual reality, which is a total immersive experience where you put on a headset and you are disconnected from your environment. Everything you see and interact is a 3D generated object. And on the other hand, for augmented reality, you have a connection to your environment, like in HoloLens, and you have some extra information, maybe 3D or maybe audio information that's available to you, which is augmenting your reality. Also, we have mobile phone applications like Pokemon Go. You are looking through the glass of your phone and you're able to find 3D objects in the real world. And this whole range of experiences we call mixed reality. And short, it's called XR.
Welcome everybody to the second talk in Channel 3 about XR on the web is just a fad. Well, a little bit of humor there, and it's a talk by Jonathan Hall, and I will first play the recording and then we will be available for QA. Have fun.
Hello and welcome to XR on the Web is Just a Fad. I am Jonathan Hale. I am the founder and CEO of Wonderland Engine, a development tool for VR and AR on the web. That probably immediately leads you to the realization that, well, the statement is derived from the internet is just a fad, which ran around the news back in 1995, and supposedly even Bill Gates supposedly said something along those lines. But this statement obviously did not really withstand the test of time, and to us nowadays, in hindsight, appears so ridiculously absurd that is where the talk of the title comes from. XR on the web is just a fad. I believe personally that this statement would be similarly absurd if anyone were to make it. So no one probably ever actually said that. To understand why I believe this is the case, let's have a look at what XR on the web actually even is. And I'll do that by giving you a brief overview, then going into the businesses and the business models inside WebXR at the moment, and finally give you a brief overview of the tech to understand where its advantages or potential disadvantages come from. And at the very end, we'll have a brief future outlook. This is a screenshot of Oculus browser. It's the default browser that you get pre-installed on the Oculus Quest or the Oculus Quest 2. It's actually one of the most used apps on the Oculus browser, and you can use it to, for example, view normal 2D websites. You can alternatively install Firefox Reality, which you get from the App Store, and it's Firefox vision of what a VR browser looks like. Of course, viewing 2D websites is not the point of WebXR, right? So many websites have, as you've seen right there and see here again, a VR button on the page that allows you to jump into this immersive experience with the website wrapped all around you. And you can, for example, have entire games on those websites or do all sorts of experience. Pretty much anything you could do in VR. And I brought some more examples here in just a minute. What you see here are games you can play on Construct Arcade, which is a free VR browser games portal. And you'll find many of these when you open the browser for the first time, suggested by Oculus in the so-called No Tab page. So this next example is a painting application that you'll also find in the Oculus browser in the recommended links. And it's really just a full-featured painting application. It's actually advanced since this video, so I highly recommend, if you have an Oculus Quest or Oculus Quest 2, go check it out. It's a lot of fun. Finally, SkiFit 365 is a downhill ski racing game in which you can even customize your avatar, choose different equipment, and then race your friends down the slope. So these were all VR examples, right? But it's actually far beyond that. WebXR, already has it in the name, right, is AR and VR. So this is Helio, which is the web browser on Magic Leap. And this is an A320 cockpit simulator on the HoloLens 2 developed by Playco Studio and demoed by Julie Smithson at AWE just recently. But AR is not just headsets, and the amount of headsets out there is very little compared to all the smartphones that are already able to do AR, and especially do AR on the web very, very well. And WebAR is already super popular for various marketing use cases and in combination with product packaging and products in general. And also, the VR side isn't actually that unpopular. This website, Constructor Arcade, has over 100,000 users per month, only Oculus Quest users, or at least users coming from headsets. And this event, this virtual event or virtual festival, Secret Sky, attracted over 160,000 attendees coming through VR headsets or through desktop. And I'll give you a quick mute preview here because I do not own any copyright of the music. But you'll still see it's pretty cool, and you can go check out this Secret Sky recap on YouTube if you like. Okay, so that was a rough overview of what WebVR and WebAR, so WebXR in general, look like. Let's have a look next into what kind of businesses actually use AR or VR on the web. And I brought a little map here, which is non-exhaustive. On the top left, you see well-known tech brands that either integrate VR or AR on the web into their products, like Sketchweb or Shopify, or provide some form of a browser that either supports AR or VR. The well-known brands on the top right have previously launched a web VR or web AR experience, but they usually do not build these experiences themselves. Instead, they hire agencies to do so, which in turn use some of the technologies you might recognize down here. And the final group is very interesting and innovative companies building B2C products, like Playco Studios building games, as we've seen before. SkiFit 365 is by them. Zesty Market is a company that provides an ad network for in AR or in VR advertising. So if you have a virtual cafe, then you might have a poster on the wall, and that poster might be bought for some company for advertising purposes. Ready Player Me has avatar services for the web, but also beyond. CryptoVoxels is a metaverse that runs on the web. Brushwork, you've seen before. ConstructorCade was the VR browser games portal. And TowerMax Fitness is a virtual gym, basically. What do all these companies want with WebXR? What's the value? And the value is mostly already inherited from VR and AR, with additionally providing some web-specific advantages. And just as a recap, the value of VR and AR comes, for example, from boosting e-commerce conversion, as we saw here just now. This is how Shopify integrates AR, and users supposedly are even up to 40% more likely to convert on a product if they have interacted with it through AR. Additionally to the increased e-commerce conversion, you have more memorable brand experiences. Users are more likely to remember your brand if they, for example, experienced the brand's world through VR. Often enterprises or manufacturing, generally the industry uses VR or AR to boost productivity or improve processes. You can garner a lot of attention through just using new technologies, and your image of being forward-thinking or progressive can help attract new workforce. On top of this, WebXR adds some very interesting twist, which stems a lot from the low entry barrier. So you can imagine, obviously, if you have an experience, you either demo that on a booth, on an event, for example, or somewhere out there in the world, right? But with WebXR, you just have a link that is not just easy to click on and then just launch the experience without downloading or installing anything, but you have this added benefit of potential virality because these users can actually then share that link with their friends or their family. The web allows for permissionless publishing. That means you do not have to go through a third-party app store, wait for curation to happen, and therefore get the permission to then publish your app to some store, right? You can just publish it to a website and it's there. Then you can share the link and it's pretty immediate. And finally, cross-platform means that you build your application once and it runs on all devices. So all the devices I've shown before, the Oculus Quest 2, or obviously all the other headsets, Pico Neo, or the Vive Flow, maybe even, they all have browsers and even cross XR. So going from VR to AR on the HoloLens or Magic Leap and finally ending up on the smartphone, right? You have an enormous user base that is actually able to view your experiences, and you only build them once because these experiences are cross-platform. This means, obviously, you can build faster. You only build your application once, and that makes generally application development faster already. In addition to that, WebXR, though, inherits a very interesting mindset of web developers, because web developers thought, hey, if I make a change in my code, I want to just see the change immediately, the effect of that change immediately appear on the website, right? And this is actually inherited in WebXR, where people even build experiences so quickly on the HoloLens, for example, that it's not worth taking off the headset in between making a change and testing the result. I believe that packaging in the bigger development platforms actually leads to not only a lot of broken development flow, but also a lot of more development and debugging time, because if you batch changes, because you know that packaging is going to take pretty long before you test, then you just cram in as many changes as you can. If something breaks, on the other hand, then you actually don't know which of those changes caused that breakage, right? Okay, so you can build faster and you can iterate faster. You have those live reloading things. You make a change and it immediately changes in the running application, right? And you never have to transfer anything to the device or install anything. You just access the website as you would later on. And you can deploy faster. As we heard before, permissionless means you do not have to wait for curation in a third-party app store. And of course, you deploy only one version of your application and you don't deploy into multiple app stores. So because you can only deploy this one single version and it's permissionless, you deploy a lot faster. And finally, you update faster. It's a website, right? You have the full control of the installation because it's on your server, right? When you update this installation, the next time the user accesses the application, it will be up to date in the latest version. So this can have many benefits throughout pretty much anyone who's touching VR and AR. But let's understand a bit where those benefits come from. And how these web apps work is actually quite simple, right? The server has the website and it sends that to the client, and the client then views this website through a browser. So you have the web page, and that web page somehow communicates with the browser, which then handles all the device-specific communication with the hardware and the APIs that run on that system, right? So the browser may underneath be using WebXR or OpenGL or Vulkan or whatever. You don't really care because you only write the web page part once, and the browser abstracts all of that underneath, so you can, it's just simply device independent, right? And the way this web page communicates with the browser is through various technologies like HTML, JavaScript, WebXR, and WebGL. But that's not all technologies that you have. And this is still not an exhaustive list. The browser provides so many different technologies. Usually the JavaScript part of your application is, in the grand scheme of things, only a small part, tying together many different technologies. And those technologies may be WebRTC for streaming video data or audio data, or just simple data like formless data. It could be payments, it could be audio for making some noise, and WebGL, WebAssembly is actually a new way to be able to use compiled languages, let it be Rust or C++, on the web for performance-critical code. You can even do image processing on the web now through WebAssembly SIMD and these kinds of extensions. Your JavaScript code in the end ties all of these things together. And so nowadays, web pages are actually super fast. On the server side, we can expand a slight bit too, because this web page might not be all of the data of your application, right? You can think of it like if someone plays a web game, he might play level 1 and then leave the website and never come back. If you do this on Steam, then you probably downloaded 120 gigabytes of data, which is level 1 to 999, right? But on the web, you only download that first level and you access the rest of the data on demand whenever you need it. You can stream that kind of data. This also works super well with location-based experiences, right? Imagine AR that somehow loads data dependent on where you are in the world, right? And you could store data for the entire world, but the user itself only downloads exactly what he needs. And this kind of mentality is completely baked into the web already. And these entire streaming frameworks, basically, that you have to replicate on native, on the web, they just exist. It's just the way that things have been done always. So when you develop, your desktop actually takes the role of the server, which means it's actually not that different from how the web page will be run later in production. Well, a little bit different, but your desktop is able to emulate that. But due to the very fast connection between the client and your desktop, you can then easily just also control the client from your desktop and like have the web page automatically reloaded and just re-access the latest version, the latest change of your web page pretty much in real time. So a question you might ask yourself with all of this client-server stuff is, what if I'm offline? A big advantage you may see with native apps is that you can install them and then you can go completely offline and you'll never have to connect to the internet again until you want to update, of course. The answer for the web here is progressive web apps, or PWAs. Progressive web apps can be thought of as web apps that act like native apps. And the idea is not to actually build a native app through web technology. That's not really a PWA. A PWA is actually a website that can be installed, for example. So PWAs can be seen as installable web apps. And other ways that these web apps actually act as if they were native apps is, for example, using notifications or using offline. And offline is basically by pre-caching data from the server that it might need in the future so that it can fully autonomously run without the internet. So you might have even seen some of these PWAs out in the wild before. Whenever you have like these prompts appear on the bottom of your screen, add whatever to home screen, that usually means that this is a PWA. It allows some form of pre-caching and it can be installed. And later, if you start this app from your home screen, it just looks like a normal app. It doesn't look like a website anymore, but it is the website. So if you're connected to the internet, it will actually update exactly how it would as if it were a website. So PWAs can cache for offline. You can install them to your home screen, and they even work on Oculus Quest, by the way. You can have PWAs in App Lab at the moment already. And finally, PWAs allow for things like notifications. Okay, so all of this is super cool, and there is so many things that we could be doing with AR and VR on the web already, but I believe there's just not too many people that see this opportunity yet. Imagine, for example, if you have a restaurant, and restaurants all have websites, right? Nowadays, there's barely any restaurant that doesn't have a website yet, at least in Germany, where I come from. And you could imagine, okay, they will probably not have an app, because would you really go to a restaurant and then install their app via Play Store or something, or via the App Store to view their virtual menu or AR menu? Maybe still at the moment, because it's so novel, but in 5 years, that'll be pretty boring. So instead, you'll have a QR code on the menu. You might easily scan that QR code with your phone, and then you have that augmented reality menu there. If we all run around with headsets, by the way, like with Apple glasses or whatever, or Snap's version of glasses, we might just click on the QR code because it already recognizes, or it automatically starts the web app or something like that, right? We wouldn't install an app, but we would definitely check out the web app if that were available, right? And now there's so many other use cases. Museums just as well. You might install an app for a museum, but it would be so much cooler if all of those interactive museum experiences would just be web apps, right? School books, small things that are just like in the book where you need them. You scan a QR code and exactly the 3D model you wanted to see appears. Print ads, that's like, there is no argument there that if you see a print ad during like a walk or something, you would definitely not go and follow the prompt to, hey, please install this ad to view the AR experience. But if there's a QR code, you would easily check out that ad, and you probably won't forget it, right? Instruction manuals. In retail, you might have some form of checking out clothes, for example, or checking out the box of a Lego set or something like that. And like playing a little game there. In bars, you may have coasters, like where you put your beer on top of, right? I believe they're called coasters, and they might have like small social games on them that you can even play with your friends on the same table or something like that, and then like play darts or something in VR or AR with them. Websites might have some augmented reality features. You could have a website where you can just scan a QR code and then have some augmented experience on that website. Board games, that evening when you play that board game, you need the app, otherwise you don't, so you just go ahead and scan a QR code that is embedded on the board, and you can go ahead and play with your friends. Finally, business cards is a very, very nice use case. Some business cards already have QR codes on them where you can then see like a 3D model of the person. And yeah, AR in general is actually a very, very clear of where the benefits are, especially on the web side of things. That's probably why it has a very high popularity already. Imagine though a world where we all own a VR headset. Then there might be a multitude of metaverses out there. You will probably not install the app for every metaverse, but there's many metaverses that you might visit relatively frequently, especially if your friends visit it a lot, that you might just want to hop in through a link every now and then. Brand experiences. We recently saw a brand experience released on the App Lab, and I was like, am I really going to install that? Probably not, but if it were so low friction that it were just clicking on a link in VR, then the probability of me checking out the brand experience just because I'm curious is actually pretty high. You might want to check out what hotels look like, but you're definitely not going to install an app for that. You might have virtual flat viewings, and there's going to be so many different flat viewing apps out there that you're just going to receive a link like you do for Zoom nowadays, and then you're going to jump into that flat using VR, and it's going to be a multi-user experience with your real estate broker or something like that. There is a use case for very small games that you would not want to install because it's too much effort to uninstall them afterwards, but you still would get a lot of value from playing them because they might have a neat mechanic or neat idea. And finally, meeting spaces, just like all the Zooms and Google Meets and everything out there. If you receive a link, this is way more convenient, especially in circumstances where you might work for a big company, and those big companies have IT security departments which block you from installing any application. So everything that runs in the browser is a good thing there. I know that was a very long list of potential ideas, and there's like so much more that could be done here. All I'm trying to say is that I am very sure that the web is going to play a huge role in XR in the very near future. And XR on the web is just a fad, already has not been said by anyone ever. I think you could be using XR on the web. You might benefit from it a lot. And if you do, then you might hear XR on the web is slow, but that's just a myth. And now we're getting to the self-promotion part of this this presentation. This myth is mostly due to using legacy frameworks. What does that mean? Frameworks that are currently being used for WebXR are made for mono rendering, like just a 3D model rotating or something on a website. They're created for moderate frame rates, like 30 frames per second at most, and they usually prefer quality over performance. But what we need for VR is obviously high frame rate stereo rendering, and because the user's comfort is at the highest position in our priority list, performance needs to come first and then quality. Because of this discrepancy, developers need to spend a lot of time optimizing the applications to run smooth. And that is time that could instead be spent on the application, and usually is also very expensive, especially if you want to hire experts for this kind of specialized skill. And that is exactly the reason why I founded Wonderland Engine. Wonderland Engine is a development platform for VR and AR on the web. It is designed from the ground up with performance and rapid iteration development workflow in mind. This is what you'd probably expect. When you open it, it looks very similar to your usual development tools for 3D, AR, and VR. And it's free. You can just go ahead and sign up on wonderlandengine.com. And with that, I want to thank you very, very much for listening to this session today. I have another workshop coming up, which is build a cross-XR multi-user experience. So if you want to try doing that in 1.5 hours together with me in Wonderland Engine, please go ahead and join me. And with that, I think we can move into Q&As with my future self.
All right, there we go. Thank you very much for this wonderful talk, Jonathan. Let me remove the video here. We don't have any comments on YouTube or Discord yet. So guys, now's the time. I'm actually very honored that I'm able to moderate this session, because I did already publish a couple of augmented reality WebXR apps, and I do have a few concerns on the limitations, but I don't know. Can you unmute yourself? I'm not sure if the audio is working. Yes.
Yeah, my microphone just died. But you hear me?
Yeah, it's kind of not very good audio quality, but it should work okay.
I'm sorry, that microphone just gave up.
I'm not sure, you are very loud. I try to see if I can see your settings. Okay.
Here we go. I adjusted the microphone. Is this better?
Perfect. Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice.
And we already have a first question. So, pretty common to ask is how to make money as a developer with WebXR.
Okay.
Anyways, but yeah.
So hello everyone, and thank you Global XR Conference for inviting me and organizing this conference so well, especially in times of COVID. These online conferences generally tend to be complicated to organize, and they did an insanely good job at this. So toast to be back. How can I make money as a developer today with WebXR? So it depends on what you're trying to do, right? As an agency, it's pretty straightforward to make money. You find a client and build a web AR experience. There's also companies like Pleco, and Yinch is in the chat if you want to ask him questions, who build VR experiences for Quest using WebXR for clients and solve training, for example, training needs or use cases like that, data visualization, just go ahead and feel free to talk to him. As a developer making, for example, indie games, right? There's a website I talked about in the presentation, which is called Construct Arcade, and they actually offer a way to do in-game monetization by doing like in-app purchases, right? They offer this Construct coin, which is a platform currency that users can buy, and then they can spend that currency inside your game that you may have released on Construct Arcade. There's Zesty Market that I also presented in the talk before, and they allow you to put advertising in your WebXR experience. That might be just like a poster at the wall, and that poster can be then rented out by any brand and bought to make you money as a developer. And you can actually make significant money with that already. It's like crypto based and maybe a little hard to get to, but it's really worth going through the struggle, and learning about crypto is a thing we should probably all be getting to at the moment anyway. And finally, because it's a web game, right? Effectively, it runs on a website, and you can have every monetization option you have on the web at the moment, let it be Google Ads, for example, or Amazon affiliate links, or whatever. You can have those on the website around your application before the user starts your game. And that is already being done on the web too, on WebXR games too. So I think that's a couple of ways to make money. Feel free to move the conversation to Discord if you need more options, but that is like the big ones you'll find.
Yep, exactly. I agree. You just have to find the opportunities. It's always depends on the situation, I would say, just like with any job, basically. Then another question by Vladimir is what about this 3D model quality? So yeah, browsers have some limitations compared to native apps, but what is your opinion about polygon counts problems and stuff?
Certainly. So it really depends. I believe if you want to render a single model, then you can get to quality that matches Unreal Engine or Unity easily, right? It really gets difficult once you have multiple objects and want to try rendering like big 3D scenes. And there, the web has a big disadvantage that the WebGL API makes it really, really hard to render multiple objects at once, and most frameworks don't actually try to work around that capacity, right? Warning self-promotion, Wonderland Engine is kind of built around this and knows, hey, draw calls, like rendering many objects is expensive. We're just gonna do our rendering in a way that we can render thousands of objects in a single draw call as if they were one object, and we can get around that a bit. Obviously, all 3D models need to be downloaded into the browser. And that means because they're downloaded on the fly, you cannot have them as large as you have in Unreal Engine 5, right? So things like that are just simply not possible in the browser at the moment. You can obviously stream continuously and slowly over time. So while the user is playing, you can just keep on downloading new 3D models. But still, that needs to happen in a somewhat reasonable time such that the model appears when it's supposed to appear and not 10 seconds later.
Right. Yeah, I think there are lots of optimization strategies that are available in conventional engines but have not arrived yet in the browser. So maybe that's just a matter of time until there's some more optimization that will also improve the performance.
100%.
Another question by Box is what advice you would have for a beginning student in extended realities?
So do you mean extended realities as in mixed realities, which is commonly referred to for AR HMDs, like Magic Leap? Or
I think AR, VR,
okay.
This is, I think, the name of the major in a university, so extended reality studies.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, I
Anyway,
did not know that. Hey, that's really cool that there's a entire
it's in Darmstadt, I think. I'm not sure. That's the one I know. Anyway.
Cool. So I love WebAR and WebVR. That's why you're obviously gonna get a very biased opinion here. But because of the smooth workflow that WebXR provides, it's a lot of fun to work with it because you get so immediate feedback to the mistakes you're potentially making, right? In programming, you make mistakes constantly, but getting immediate feedback to understand what you did that caused the mistake is actually really important. And because you have this really fast iteration, making the change, immediately seeing the result, that is a lot more fun, in my opinion, than working on native, where you usually wait minutes for the compile times before you can actually view the experience in the headset. Unless you're using like a preview, there is like options to actually have sane development experience on native too, but it's a lot more difficult to set up, where with WebXR you can get started pretty quickly. So for beginners, definitely check out WebXR. It's also a very easy and cheap way to get started.
Awesome. Right. So I also have a question actually regarding the metaverse that's currently like hyping pretty much. I understand it that also the idea of having like this like experience of a metaverse is to be able to switch between multiple like independent applications easily. And the browser is really excellent for that. You basically cannot do that with native apps. You would have to close the app. But there's still not really like a common framework for how you would browse in a AR environment. Like there's not like a taskbar where you can just open a new tab or something. So how you would imagine like people would like what would be some best practices for building an app where you can switch between different virtual worlds, let's say?
Currently, it's actually difficult on a technical side because for privacy reasons, the browsers do not allow you in an immersive session to switch to the next immersive session without switching out and back in again. There is no trusted UI, like you mentioned. There's no like URL bar somewhere in VR floating around there where you can know, okay, this UI is always going to be the browser, and if I put something in there, it's actually always going to the browser, and it's not like faked by the website. It's called spoofing, to kind of steal your input and then move you to a different website that acts as if it were that website to try to steal your information, right? And on the 2D web, we don't have that problem. There's a
So
loud noise. Sorry, it's all good. I think again.
was it me? Sorry.
I don't know. Sorry. Yes, it is you. So people have tried doing things like navigating from immersive sessions to others through portals, for example, but it's generally an unsolved problem at the moment. But yes, it could be like a form of metaverse that could exist from that.
Okay, yeah, I hope you can hear me clearly.
It's okay, yeah.
I also think like it's a standardization problem, and like the browsers would need to have some framework which we as developer would just like tie into. Yeah, I haven't really seen much proposals that are in that direction, but we'll see. It's still evolving.
If there isn't any more questions, you had concerns about the limitations of WebXR. I'd love to, like, if you...
Indeed. Yeah. Basically, yeah, it's just tying into the whole like industry, how it works nowadays, that hardware developers just try to show off all the cool features for their specific headsets or whatever. And like they have like all the APIs that are like optimized. They provide sample projects for native apps. And then if you want to use all these cool features, you have to use their provided SDKs basically. And if you do that in WebAR, it's mostly more limited. in my experiences. So yeah, I don't know what could be done about this problem.
So I think OpenXR helps a lot because OpenXR will allow browsers to integrate with basically any device in a agnostic way, such that all the features become available pretty instantly once the device implements OpenXR as like a implementation, right? I think we have been very fortunate that on devices like Oculus or HoloLens, the device manufacturers like Microsoft and Facebook or Oculus have been very pushy on the web and actually have been very quick with developing features like, for example, hand tracking on Oculus or all these like cool performance features that are incoming at the moment very, very quickly. But it is usually indeed the case that they are maybe a month behind the native space. And such features might not become available immediately. I think in the long run, that month probably, hopefully, doesn't make too much of a difference. But I think it's also something that will gradually soften out, and hopefully through OpenXR, as I mentioned, the problem will be solved entirely.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just like engines where the standard thing to do for most of these. When VR started, it was basically all engine, and now we gradually maybe transfer to more and more access into WebXR. All right. I had another thing. I forgot now.
I mean, regarding the engine thing, the only reason I think that these device manufacturers provide these examples for Unity or Unreal Engine is because they are already popular, right? With WebXR getting more and more popular, there will already be a huge set of like shared community kind of based examples for WebXR. And that will actually allow manufacturers to be like, okay, we want to support this huge set of examples with like this huge ecosystem. Like, I mean, the browser supports the entire JavaScript ecosystem, which is a huge community, right? A huge amount of developers there and huge amount of pre-written code that you can integrate through Node.js or NPM or any other of the technologies out there, right? And I think device manufacturers will eventually have huge advantages from supporting WebXR because of this existing ecosystem. It might just take a little bit more time until that ecosystem is as large as to have this advantage for the device manufacturers.
Exactly. Yeah. Another concern I have about the ecosystem, actually, it's all these like web AR features currently are provided by like some development platforms that like give you the tools to develop a WebXR app, but they are actually incentivized to like provide the tools to the like developers and like make the developers pay for all the stuff on from this one platform. So like all the hosting and all the other things are like constrained, and that's just an economic incentive. But I think it can also hinder the interoperability. Like when you want to have like a common standards, like okay, that is all the same in the WebXR, but the actual development platforms do all their own thing. So like all the applications will be different, and some have like specialized features that they are kind of guarding that are not available anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And so you still have this division in the platform's capabilities. What do you think about this? I mean, on the one side, it's a good thing that there is this economic incentive, but on the other side, it creates this division.
I think that we see that mainly in AR. I think on the VR side, it's not really a problem because the WebXR standard is really great there, and that's why features there are already supported well. On the AR side, though, the WebXR spec, unfortunately, is a little bit behind, not necessarily only the spec though, but the specification as in like the standard for the APIs, right? But also the implementations. For AR, iOS and Android are the biggest two platforms that you might want to support. And the Chrome and Samsung Internet on Android support AR through the WebXR standard already super well. And that works insanely well. And like you can use this already today. But on iOS, WebKit and Safari do not support this standard yet. So if you wanted to build an app that supports all of these smartphones, then you have a big issue. And that's why we have this fragmentation of the market where there's like a bunch of different libraries you can use to do AR on the web with like various tracking solutions, right? And there's like, I don't know, 15 different companies providing a development platform that does image tracking on its own way, right? And Eighth Wall is probably the most prominent there, but in my opinion, their business model or pricing model is not very easy to pay for, let's say. But there's very interesting open source solutions like Mind AR.js I'd like to get rid of, and Web AR Kit, which is emerging out of like the AR.js work that has been done. So Web AR Kit. They're doing fantastic work at the moment with getting some nice image tracking free for everyone out there. And Mind AR.js even has face tracking and this kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that like 3 years down the line, we won't be talking about this anymore because the Web AR standard, like WebXR AR parts of the standard, have been matured and also implemented in ARKit. I think they will eventually through their Apple classes, which we're all speculating are going to come out at some point. And I think then it's pretty easy because any native implementation inside the browser will probably supersede whatever you can do in like a JavaScript framework. And hence, yeah, I hope it'll eventually like not matter anymore.
Yeah, indeed. That's where we're working towards. And yeah, it's always like there's some that will steam ahead with some new features, and like everybody else needs some time, and then they will eventually catch up, or stuff will be standardized. Yeah, I think that's the ideal scenario. And then with APIs, you can just access it directly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and this different browser problem I also encountered. I didn't think of that, but like we had an app that was working fine everywhere, but when you open it on Safari, it didn't work. Yeah, I think that's just symptoms of this emerging technology. Like people need to, when it will become more common, then the browser companies will pay more attention to make this interoperable. We have one last community question. Comparison to existing. Oh, yes. So like the quality of the tracking, right? There are like these companies that very popular is Vuforia SDK that is providing the computer vision on native apps. And Web AR is maybe there's a notion that it's less performant than native apps. It's hard to tell. I don't know if there's any metric of showing the performance on these things.
So with AR tracking, it is actually the case that tracking is a lot slower than on native currently. That I've actually recently dug into this a bit to figure out if we could have a nice solution here for Wonderland Engine. It turns out that getting the video into WebAssembly, for example, is a pain point or like a bottleneck. And effectively, while there is like SIMD instructions, like single instruction, multiple data, meaning you can do like multiple things at once, like compute things for multiple pixels at once in WebAssembly. It's super fast, but most of these like tracking solutions ideally even run on the GPU, like having more or less direct access to the video data. And all of that is not currently possible through the browser, and hopefully will be eventually. But that's why I guess it's a little bit slower. Though, if you use WebXR AR, then there's literally no difference whatsoever. Then the tracking is exactly as fast as native, because under the hood, it uses AR Core, or hopefully one day in Safari AR Kit. And that means you literally are using native, even though you're inside the browser. So that's just a difference you get between like a WebAssembly implementation and a native implementation. But I have to say that eventually this is going to not be true anymore. WebAssembly is already very close to getting to native speeds. It's just like some instructions that are very specific to this, the hardware you're running on can only be accessed currently through native and not yet through WebAssembly. I think 5 years down the line, WebAssembly will probably match native in performance.
Yeah, perfect. It basically ties into all these issues that I mentioned earlier. It's just the steps on development that we have to take, and yeah, people are working on it right now, and so we just have to be a bit patient to get these tools, get the capabilities basically on our tools. Yeah, we're already over time, but I don't know. There were one more question that I skipped about no-code or low-code tools for making these WebXR experiences. Yeah, I think you are basically providing that also in Wonderland Engine. That's what
Yeah,
you
Wonderland
showed.
Engine is a little bit more for developers, right? But you can, as a designer, easily use Wonderland Engine. I think the easiest solution for designers is to go with a Sketchfab viewer or something like that, just to like take a tangent that probably no one expected. But Sketchfab has a very nice viewer that allows a small degree of interactivity. If you want to do anything more interactive, like building a game, you can probably find a no-code solution out there. But with Wonderland Engine, it's probably low code. And ideally, you just have a coder with you that does the code parts for you or something like that. Regarding WebGPU support in Android browsers is coming, but it's going to be behind a flag, and I would predict for the next year or so at least. So until it's actually widely usable, it'll take some time. How is target plane in WebXR in comparison? I think we
That's what I tried to ask earlier. Yeah,
already talked about
tracking.
that,
and yeah, I think we basically answered all the questions, and we are also over time. I was messaged to close the session. So thanks, Jonathan, again, and yeah, thanks for the talk.
Thank you, Robin.
Let's wrap up.
Bye, everyone.